Matthew in New York.
Great.
Matthew. Hello, can you hear us?
Hey, hey everyone. I just wanted to get your opinion on something that happened to me a while ago. Is it all right if I go ahead?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. So over the 4th of July week, I spent the week with a friend and their family, and we had a barbecue with one of their family friends, right? And they have this small ethnic community in that area, very close knit. It has certain ethnic uniqueness that goes with having that small community in an alien country, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So they kind of cling together and they have that whole community group. And one thing I noticed was this friend, well, the family whom we visited for the barbecue, the father was very, very clearly abusive. I later spoke to my friend and I heard things like, hey, the father has a wife, they have a joint account, and the father doesn't give access to the wife to take any money out of the account. He routinely insults his 2 daughters and praises his son. He has on occasion gotten drunk and physically hurt them. And the mother, I don't know what her plan is, but she seems to be hesitant to go to any institution or authority to kind of resolve it. Maybe it's because her daughters are still, 14 and 16, and she's waiting until they can kind of get to a point where they're able to get their education before she takes some action. Just want to know, do you know any resources? I don't know how to report this because the friend whom I spoke to doesn't want to report it, and their family doesn't want to report it because they have that community and they're afraid of, community backlash, which is like, hey, why did you stick your nose into this family's business? Now you've ruined the perfectly good family, that sort of stuff.
Right.
Any advice or resources would be very helpful.
Yeah. Well, I can only empathize from a personal angle. It sounds very similar to what I grew up in, and a very similar situation that my mom was in, having to decide, should I leave while the kids are young, and risk that particular kind of damage, or do I leave now and not wait until they get older? And there are considerations there, and it was a process of many conversations had with my mom and my siblings to finally decide to leave. But we also were part of a very small church community, so not a cultural one in that sense, but still a very tightly knit group of people who would have judged if the family split up. You ruined a good family. That hit very close to home just now. So I can certainly empathize personally, but in terms of resources and next steps, I think I'm going to leave that to the relationship therapists that I've got on with me today.
Well, and Matthew, your connection is a little bit weak, so I'm going to acknowledge that I missed a couple of things you said. I guess I want to make sure to summarize this a little bit and make sure I understand you. It sounds like you are coming into a family that's not your own. You're witnessing some things that sound really misogynistic, that sound really problematic in a lot of different ways. And because it's a minority culture that you're not familiar with and a family that's not directly your own, but that impacts you, you're kind of trying to figure out your role in all of this and whether or not you have a right or a responsibility to step in. Is that sort of a fair way of framing your question?
Yeah, that would be fairly accurate. Thank you.
Okay, well, yeah, I know that these are definitely tricky items. You know, any family is going to have really complex dynamics, and it's difficult to know what our part in that is, especially when we're coming into this system that has existed for so long without us. Madison, what kind of tips do you have for being sensitive, but also, I suppose, proactive?
Right. And it is. I will say it's difficult to come into a situation where it's not your personal family, but maybe the family of a friend or a partner, and not knowing what to do or your place in it. So, first of all, good for you for wanting to reach out and do something about it, or, try to step in a little bit. The first thing I heard, and I guess my concern, is that there's children in the home. And when we're thinking about domestic violence or issues like that, the number one thing is that those children are kept safe. So when I'm thinking of, next steps or things that need to happen, and of course, obviously completely up to you, if there's anything like domestic violence or something happening in the home, you can make an anonymous tip to CPS, Child Protective Services, so that they can do their own investigation and everything. And I know that sounds like a lot. It sounds like it might be a little bit scary. However, you're also doing your due diligence and keeping those children safe. Of course, his partner in the situation also should be kept safe, but children in the household is number one priority here. As far as resources go, there are a whole bunch of resources as far as women who are battered or abused. There are resources for her on where she can go and what she can do. However, it is up to you if you want to share some of those resources with her or offer them to her. But again, that's kind of completely around your comfortability and how much you want to interject in the situation.
Yeah, it's important to remember that there are certainly instances where it's necessary for us as members of a society, as maybe a tangential member of this family, to step in. But when we do that, we're very much risking breaking something that has already been existing safely or somewhat safely for a long time before we got there. And so when you start to disrupt that, when you start to push things around, you can be really intensifying some of those risks and some of that danger, which is something that I think you need to be in real communication with your partner about, really careful and and just slow and hesitant to do.
Yeah, I can speak from experience here too. I had some outside family members, extended family, who didn't understand the full extent of what was going on, but were aware that there was an issue. And as well-intentioned as they were in kind of trying to like needle and like get into there and like figure out what was going on and make sure that we were okay, ultimately what it ended up doing was worsening things because they didn't have a final kind of the term final solution is a terrible one, but they didn't have a
ultimate
final conclusion as to how to go about actually rectifying it. So they would get my dad mad and then leave.
Mm-hmm.
and that's not a good situation to be in. So if you do decide to move forward in helping this family, I would say make sure that it is a final thing. Like you get all of the resources and make sure that they can get to safety as soon as that break happens. Because if they are still stuck there when this is all going down, that could be potentially very dangerous.
I know those are some pretty tricky responses to leave you with, Matthew. This is obviously a tricky situation and not something that, three strangers on the internet are necessarily equipped to fix for you. But I do hope that we're kind of maybe answering that question a little bit and pointing you in the right direction. What kinds of things are coming to mind for you? What kind of tips or resources could we point you towards?
I guess one thing that comes to mind is the cultural piece. This they come from a culture where divorce is kind of once a woman's divorced, she's basically excommunicated from society almost. It's a very traditional, unfortunately, mindset that exists in this community. But I'm a little worried about that. That's something I'll have to think about before I stick my nose into the family's business. Another thing is that, I guess Child Protective Services is a good place to start. I don't think they fully understand that they can live without the husband. It seems to be like a very, again, a traditional mentality. They're immigrants, first generation. So lots to consider.
Yeah, it sounds multifaceted, and certainly there is no one correct answer. But it's good that you're aware that this is happening and that you want to help. And I don't know, I just say make sure that whatever it is you do, you make sure that the people you are helping are actually benefiting from it and are in a safe environment when it's all over.
Yeah. Tread lightly. You are not necessarily going to be disrupting things if you gently offer a safe place to stay or simply let somebody know that you are available. Even that can be a potentially dangerous or transgressive act. So whatever amount of caution feels natural and intuitive to you, let me encourage you to interrogate that and potentially double it. Because while I never want to encourage people to just stand by and allow others to be abused, I want to really caution you to the potential dangers of intervening in a way that's inappropriate when you don't necessarily know the lay of the land.
Absolutely.
And I trust you more than us. You're there on the ground. You see the situation. So just use your best judgment and be cautious is, I think, where I would leave it. Did y'all have any final points to offer?
I just agree with what y'all are saying as far as keeping a safe space or providing a safe space, maybe for them to be or to go in this scenario. 100%.
Well, so I don't want to disrupt what the family is doing, but I will keep these resources in my back pocket, and I've made myself available to the daughters and to the mother and the children and the mother. So if they do need something, they're free to reach out to me. And now I have some resources that I can kind of point them towards. So that helps.
Good. Wonderful. Thank you so much for calling in.
It is a complicated situation. I understand. Thank you. Thank you for taking my call, and appreciate it. I'm sure they will if I ever get to help them out. Thank you.
Of course. Stay safe.
Take care.
Yep.
Vi, before we jump into that next call, I guess I just want to remind everybody that Madison actually put together a great list of different readings and different ideas exploring this topic. A lot of those are in the footnotes to this episode. In particular, like I said, a link to her blog. So we're going to continue to be discussing some national resources as well as just some good readings and things to be aware of. So if you find yourself in a situation like Matthew, or worse yet, find yourself in a situation like the people Matthew was describing, I hope that you are able to take a look at some of those resources. And God, I just hope that they're helpful.
Yeah.